She dumped me with, "We'll always be friends though." I replied, "Absolutely." Weeks later, she found out friendship didn't include rent money, emotional support, or car repairs, especially once I started dating her roommate. The end of my 2-year relationship came on a Tuesday night. It wasn't a shouting match or a dramatic, tear-filled fight. It was quiet, condescending, and ended with the most insulting sentence a person can hear. "We'll always be friends, though." My now ex, Amber, had been acting distant for weeks. She's an artist, or at least that's what she calls herself. Mostly it means she works part-time at a coffee shop, spends the rest of her time talking about the novel she's going to write someday, and looks down on people like me who actually work for a living. I own a small business restoring classic cars. I work with my hands. To her and her pretentious art school friends, that made me simple. Reliable, but simple. A sturdy piece of furniture you keep in the living room but don't really think about. That night, she sat me down on the couch in our apartment, an apartment where my income covered about 80% of the expenses, and gave me the speech. She'd clearly been practicing it. It was full of vague nonsense about needing to nurture her creative soul and how she felt stifled by our relationship. The subtext was loud and clear. I, with my grease-stained hands and my practical, logical brain, was not exciting enough for her grand, artistic destiny. I didn't argue. I didn't try to change her mind. I'm a mechanic. When an engine is shot, you don't try to reason with it. You accept that it's broken and you either rebuild it or you scrap it. And this relationship was totaled. So I just sat there, listening, as she laid out the terms of her departure from my life. And then came the final, patronizing blow. She put her hand on my knee, her expression a perfect blend of pity and self-importance. "We'll always be friends though, right?" she said, as if she were bestowing a great honor upon me. She expected me to be grateful. She expected me to nod along, happy to be kept in her orbit as a platonic, reliable resource. The ever-dependable Jake, always there to fix her car or help with the bills, but now without any of the messy expectations of a real relationship. In that moment, a switch flipped in my head. The hurt and disappointment I might have felt were instantly replaced by a cold, hard clarity. She wasn't breaking up with a partner. She was reclassifying an asset. I looked at her perfectly composed, sincere-looking face, and I gave her a slow, even smile. "Absolutely," I said. The relief that washed over her was visible. She had done it. She had her freedom, but she had managed to keep her safety net. She had no idea that my definition of friendship was about to become a very harsh and very expensive lesson for her. "Oh, good," she said, her smile now genuine. "I'm so glad you're being so mature about this." "Of course," I said, standing up from the couch. "That's what friends are for. So, as your new friend, let me give you some friendly advice. You should start looking for a roommate to cover my portion of the rent, because I'll be moving out this weekend. My friendship is free, but my share of the bills is not." The smile on her face didn't just fade. It shattered. "What? You're moving out? But you can't. Where am I supposed to go?" "I'm not sure," I said, walking towards the bedroom to start packing. "But I'm sure a resourceful artist like you will figure it out. Friends believe in each other, right?" Update 1. The concept of me actually leaving was something Amber's brain simply could not compute. For the next hour, she followed me from room to room as I started gathering my things, her arguments escalating from confusion to panic to outright rage. "You can't just abandon me here," she said, as I started pulling my clothes out of the closet we shared. "The lease is in both our names. You're legally responsible." "You're right," I said, not breaking my rhythm. "We are both legally responsible, which is why I will continue to pay my half of the rent until the end of this month. That gives you about 3.5 weeks to find a new roommate to take over my spot. Or we can break the lease together, which comes with a $2,000 penalty that we would split. I'm comfortable with either option. The choice is yours." The mention of a $1,000 penalty, a sum she absolutely did not have, sent a fresh wave of panic across her face. Her part-time job was for what she called inspiration money, enough to cover her daily coffee and art supplies. I was the one who handled the actual cost of living. "I can't afford that. And I can't find a roommate in 3 weeks. You have to stay, Jake, at least until the lease is up in 6 months. It's the decent thing to do. We're friends, remember?" Friends don't force friends to live in an awkward, emotionally charged environment, I said, pausing to look at her. That would be unhealthy. As your friend, I'm giving you the space you need to find yourself. And I'm taking my space too. It was at that moment that our third roommate, Maya, came home. Maya was a veterinary technician who rented the apartment's small second bedroom. She was quiet, worked insane hours, and generally tried to stay as far away from Amber's constant low-grade drama as possible. She walked in, took one look at my open suitcase and Amber's tear-streaked, furious face, and just sighed. "Don't tell me," she said, her voice weary. "Her car broke down again?" "Worse," Amber wailed, turning to her for support. "He's leaving me. He's moving out." Maya's eyes met mine over Amber's head. I just gave a small, tired shrug. "We broke up," I explained. "I'm getting my things. I'm paid up through the end of the month. After that, you'll have a new roommate." Maya's expression was unreadable, but she gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Okay," she said. Then, without another word, she disappeared into her room and closed the door. She was a professional at non-engagement. Amber, deprived of an ally, spent the rest of the weekend trying every manipulation tactic in the book. She cried. She reminisced about our first date. She accused me of being a cold, heartless monster. I didn't take the bait. I just kept packing. My responses always filtered through the new, infuriatingly unhelpful lens of our friendship. "You're really just going to throw away 2 years of memories?" she'd cry. "As your friend, I think it's important to focus on the future, not the past," I'd reply, my voice full of a calm, serene detachment. The first real test of our new dynamic came the following week. I had moved my things into a small, temporary apartment and was in the process of setting up my new life. I got a call from her on a Tuesday night. "Jake, thank God you answered," she said, her voice a frantic whisper. "The power just went out, and the internet is down. You have to come over and fix it." "Did you check the breaker box?" I asked. "The what?" "I don't know anything about that. You always just handled it." "The breaker box is in the utility closet in the hallway," I explained patiently. "It's probably just a tripped switch. You just need to find the one that's out of line and flip it back." "I'm not doing that. It's dark and I'm scared. What if I get electrocuted?" "You need to come over, please, Jake, as my friend." There it was, the friendship card. I took a deep breath. "Amber, as your friend, I'm concerned for your safety. But I'm 2 towns away. It would take me an hour to get there. The fastest solution is for you to call the emergency maintenance number for the apartment building. That's what it's for. They have someone on call 24/7. Their number is on the fridge." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. She was so used to me being her personal on-call handyman that the idea of using a normal, conventional solution had never even occurred to her. "But they'll charge for that, won't they?" she asked, her voice small. "They might," I said. "But as your friend, I think your safety and comfort are worth it, don't you? You got this. Let me know how it goes." I hung up before she could argue. The calls and texts continued, of course. A few days later, it was about her car making a weird noise. I advised her to take it to a reputable mechanic. When she complained about the cost, I, as a friend, advised her to start a savings account for car repairs. Each problem she encountered, a problem I would have once solved without a second thought, was now met with a wall of calm, friendly, and utterly useless advice. I was her friend. And friends, I was teaching her, don't solve your problems for you. They just pat you on the back and wish you luck. Update 2. The slow-motion implosion of Amber's life continued for the next month, and I had a front-row seat thanks to my new, unlikely friendship with Maya. After I moved out, Maya and I started texting. It began as a sort of battlefield intel exchange. She'd give me a heads up when Amber was having a particularly spectacular meltdown, and I'd offer my sympathies. I learned that Amber's search for a roommate was a complete disaster. She wasn't looking for someone to split the rent. She was looking for a replacement me. The ad she posted was a laundry list of demands. The new roommate had to be clean, quiet, financially stable, and willing to help out with household tasks. She was essentially trying to hire a new live-in boyfriend who would also pay her bills. Unsurprisingly, she had no takers. One evening, Maya texted me, sounding more stressed than usual. Her dog, a scruffy little terrier mix named Buster, was sick. He was lethargic and wouldn't eat, and she was starting to panic. The emergency vet clinic was on the other side of town, and she was afraid to take him on the bus. "Amber is out with some new guy she met at a poetry reading," she texted. "I don't know who else to call." I didn't even think about it. "I'm on my way," I replied. I drove her and Buster to the clinic. We spent the next 4 hours in the waiting room, talking about everything and nothing. She told me about the crushing pressure of law school, and I told her about the satisfaction of bringing a classic car back to life with my own hands. We learned that we had the same sarcastic sense of humor, the same no-nonsense approach to life. By the time the vet came out and told us Buster was going to be fine, he had just eaten a sock. Something had shifted between us. I started finding more excuses to see her. I offered to help her with her own car, a beat-up old sedan that was in even worse shape than Amber's. I spent a Saturday afternoon under her hood, changing her oil and replacing her spark plugs. I didn't ask for a dime. I did it because I wanted to. Because I liked her. We started dating, quietly at first. It was easy. It was fun. There was no drama, no manipulation, just two people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. We kept it to ourselves. We knew that if Amber found out, it would trigger a Category 5 hurricane of drama. The inevitable confrontation came about 2 months after my breakup with Amber. She had finally, miraculously, found a new roommate. A young grad student who was clearly just desperate for a place to live. I had to go to the apartment to sign the papers to get my name off the lease. Maya had just finished her last final of the semester, so I told her I'd take her out to celebrate afterward. She decided to just come with me to the apartment so we could leave from there. The scene in the living room was tense. The building manager was there, along with the new roommate, who already looked like he was regretting his decision. Amber was being performatively cheerful, talking loudly about her new chapter and how everything happens for a reason. As I was signing the final document, releasing me from all future responsibility for the apartment, Maya, who was standing beside me, reached out and squeezed my hand. A small gesture of support, but to Amber, it was a declaration of war. Her eyes, which had been darting around the room with a manic, false energy, landed on our intertwined hands. The fake smile on her face froze, then cracked. It was like watching a dam break in slow motion. The color drained from her face, and her eyes filled with a look of such profound, venomous betrayal that it actually took me by surprise. She had lost her boyfriend, her financial provider, her handyman, and her emotional punching bag. And now, she was watching him be replaced, in her own living room, by the quiet, unassuming roommate she had never even bothered to get to know. She didn't scream, she didn't cry, she just stared at our hands, and in that moment, I think she finally understood the full, devastating cost of her friendship. Final update. It's been a little over a year since I walked out of that apartment for the last time. My life, and Amber's, have continued on the different paths she was so eager to explore. After the lease signing incident, Amber's world completely fell apart. Her new roommate, the grad student, lasted exactly 6 weeks. He moved out in the middle of the night, leaving a note that said he would rather live in his car than spend another day in that apartment. Unable to cover the rent on her own, Amber was evicted. The last Maya heard, she had been forced to move back in with her parents in a small town 3 hours away. Her grand, artistic life in the city was over. Her journey of self-discovery had led her right back to her childhood bedroom. Her attempts to launch a smear campaign against me and Maya failed miserably. She had alienated too many people. Everyone knew she had been the one to end our relationship. Her narrative of being the betrayed, heartbroken victim had no audience. As for me, my life has never been better. Maya and I are now living together in a small house I bought on the other side of town, a place with a big yard for Buster and a 2-car garage for my projects. She passed the bar exam and is now working as a junior associate at a downtown law firm. We are a team, a true partnership. We split the bills, we share the chores, and we support each other's ambitions without a hint of resentment or competition. It's the easiest, most natural relationship I've ever been in. My revenge was never a big, dramatic plan. It was just a quiet, consistent refusal to play her game. She wanted to be friends? Fine. I was the best friend she could have. I offered her endless advice and zero actual help. I simply enforced the new boundaries she had created, and I let her experience the full, unfiltered consequences of her own choices. I stepped out of the role of her provider, and her life, which had been built entirely on that foundation, collapsed. Then I built a better life, with a better woman, right under her nose. And that, it turns out, is the most satisfying kind of friendship there is. She faked evidence of me cheating and cried to my family. How could he do this to me? I just stayed quiet, but when the other woman showed up to our family dinner, she introduced herself as my private investigator. The silence from my own family was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. I was sitting in my parents' living room, a place that had always been a sanctuary, and it felt like an interrogation chamber. My mother was looking at me with eyes full of shattered disappointment. My father, a man who taught me the value of integrity, couldn't even meet my gaze. My sister, usually my fiercest defender, was sitting as far away from me as possible. And in the center of it all, holding court on my mother's favorite armchair, was my fiancée, Amelia. She was putting on an Oscar-worthy performance, complete with trembling hands and a voice choked with perfectly timed sobs. I just don't understand, she wept, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue. I found the messages on his laptop, explicit messages to some woman named Catherine, and the pictures he was out with her at a restaurant, laughing. How could he do this to me, to us? She had called this family intervention herself. An ambush. 2 days ago she had come to me, her face a mask of fury and grief, holding up her phone to show me screenshots. They were text messages, supposedly from me to this Catherine, filled with the kind of garbage you see in bad movies. There were also 2 photos, grainy and taken from a distance, of me at a restaurant talking to a woman with dark hair. I knew, in that instant, that they were fake. I had never sent those messages. I had never met a woman named Catherine. The photos were of me at a business lunch with a new client 2 weeks ago, a meeting Amelia knew about. But the way they were cropped, the context stripped away, it looked incriminating if you wanted it to. And my family, who adored Amelia, wanted to believe it. My first instinct was to fight, to deny everything, to point out the inconsistencies. But then I looked at Amelia's face. There was no pain in her eyes. Beneath the fake tears, there was a cold, triumphant gleam. This wasn't the act of a heartbroken woman. This was the calculated move of an executioner. She wasn't confronting me. She was destroying me. And she had chosen the perfect battlefield, the hearts and minds of my family. So I made a choice. I said nothing. I let her perform. I let her spin her web of lies. I absorbed the looks of disgust from my family. Because in that moment, I understood that this wasn't a trial I could win with words. Arguing would only make me look guilty and defensive. The only way to win was to let her think she had already won, to let her build her entire case on a foundation of lies that I knew, with absolute certainty, I could demolish. "Daniel, say something," my father finally grunted, his voice thick with shame. I looked at Amelia. I looked at my family, their faces a mixture of pain and judgment. "There's nothing to say," I said, my voice quiet and even. "Amelia has shown you what she found. You've made up your minds." My silence was my confession, in their eyes. Amelia's crocodile tears turned into a quiet, victorious sniffle. She had won. She had successfully painted me as the villain, the cheater, the man who had broken the heart of their perfect angel. She had isolated me from my own blood. The thing is, Amelia had made a fatal miscalculation. She thought she was playing chess with a pawn. She had no idea she was sitting across from a grandmaster. She thought this was the end of the game. For me, it was just the opening move. You see, I had been suspicious of Amelia for months. There were little things, her sudden secretiveness with her new burner phone, the unexplained expenses, the vague stories about nights out with friends I'd never met. I'm a systems analyst by trade. I build and secure complex data networks. My entire career is about seeing patterns and identifying vulnerabilities. And Amelia's life had suddenly become full of them. So 6 weeks before her little performance in my parents' living room, I had done what I do best. I started a quiet, methodical investigation. I hired the best private investigator in the state, a woman named Catherine Shaw. Sharp, professional, and incredibly discreet. Her name, I noted with a certain irony, was Catherine. Close enough. I had given her a simple directive: find out what my fiancé is really up to. I had a feeling I wasn't going to like the answer. I had no idea how right I was. So, as I sat there in that living room being cast out by my own family, I wasn't feeling heartbreak. I was feeling a cold, clean rage, and the quiet, thrilling hum of a plan clicking perfectly into place. Amelia had just handed me the sword to cut her own throat. And I was going to enjoy every second of the swing. Update 1. The 2 weeks following the intervention were the loneliest of my life. My family treated me like a pariah. My mother would call and leave tearful voicemails, begging me to do the right thing and give Amelia whatever she wanted. My father was stoic and distant. My sister sent me a furious text telling me I had ashamed our family. It hurt, but I had to understand their perspective. For 2 years, Amelia hadn't just dated me. She'd systematically embedded herself into our family. She remembered every birthday, helped my mom with her garden project, and became the daughter she never had. She wasn't just my fiancée, she was their trusted friend. Her manipulation was a long game, which made their blindness to her lies more tragic and understandable. I knew I couldn't resent them for it. I just had to show them the truth. Amelia, meanwhile, was living her best life. She had moved into the guest room of our shared house, a house that I owned, creating a physical and emotional barrier. She played the part of the grieving, wronged woman to perfection. She spent her days on the phone with my mother and sister, solidifying her position as the victim. And she started spending money. My money. She went on shopping sprees, telling my mother it was retail therapy to cope with the trauma I had inflicted. Legally, her plan became clear. She hired a notoriously aggressive divorce lawyer. A letter arrived demanding that I vacate the house immediately, as it was causing her extreme emotional distress to live under the same roof as me. The letter also laid out her demands for the settlement: the house, the car, and a crippling amount of alimony, citing my infidelity and emotional abuse as the cause for the dissolution of our engagement. Her strategy was simple: make me the bad guy, use my family's emotional weight against me, and bleed me dry. While she was busy planning her victory parade, I was quietly assembling my arsenal. My private investigator, Catherine, was a true professional. Her reports were delivered to my secure email every evening, and they painted a picture of a woman I didn't even know. Amelia wasn't just spending my money, she was moving it. Her accomplice, Alex, was sloppy. He left a digital paper trail, moving the money through a series of domestic accounts to muddy the waters before sending it to a secret offshore account. That initial domestic trail was all Catherine's forensics team needed to unravel the entire scheme. The total amount was staggering, well into the six figures. And she wasn't doing it alone with Alex, her so-called wealth manager. Catherine's surveillance team had photos, dozens of them. Photos of Amelia and Alex at fancy dinners, checking into boutique hotels, kissing in his car. The timeline was damning. Their affair had been going on for nearly a year. The best part, the piece that made my blood run cold with its sheer audacity, was Catherine's final report. Her team had gained access to the burner phone's unsecured cloud backup, a rookie mistake for an aspiring criminal. In that backup, she found the original, uncropped photos of my business lunch. She also found the application Amelia had used to create the fake text messages, complete with a saved draft of the conversation with Catherine. And then the crown jewel, a series of messages between Amelia and Alex, sent the day before the intervention. Amelia, the stage is set. I'm showing the family the evidence tomorrow. They'll eat it up. Daniel won't know what hit him. Alex, perfect. Once he's isolated, he'll be desperate to settle. We can drain him completely. You play the victim, I'll handle the money. We'll be in the Cayman Islands by Christmas. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a premeditated criminal conspiracy to defraud and destroy me. Her faked evidence of my cheating was just a smokescreen for her real crimes. I now had everything I needed: the motive, the means, the evidence. All that was left was to set the stage for the final act. I called my mother. I told her that I was ready to talk, to apologize. I told her that I had been a fool, and that I wanted to make things right with Amelia and the family. I asked if she would host a family dinner on Sunday night, a reconciliation dinner. I told her I would even invite Catherine, the other woman, so I could apologize to her in front of everyone and end things properly. My mother cried with relief. She thought I had finally come to my senses. She immediately called Amelia to share the good news. Amelia, I'm sure, was ecstatic. She thought her plan had worked perfectly. She believed I was broken, ready to confess to a crime I didn't commit and beg for her forgiveness. She had no idea she was accepting an invitation to her own execution. Update 2. Sunday night arrived. The atmosphere at my parents' house was thick with a kind of grim anticipation. When I walked in, my family looked at me with a mixture of pity and lingering disgust. Amelia was already there, sitting on the couch, looking serene and magnanimous, like a queen preparing to grant a pardon to a groveling subject. She had dressed for the occasion in a soft, cream-colored dress, a picture of innocence. We sat down for dinner. The small talk was excruciating. My father tried to talk about sports. My mother kept asking if everyone had enough to eat. Amelia just watched me, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. She thought this was all for her. My public humiliation. Halfway through the main course, I cleared my throat. The table fell silent. I know why we're all here, I began, my voice steady. I know what you all think of me, and I know I have a lot to answer for. I looked directly at Amelia. Her smile widened. This was it, the moment she'd been waiting for. You're right to be angry, I continued, letting my gaze sweep across my family. I have been hiding something. I have been seeing another woman, and I'm deeply sorry for the pain it's caused. My mother started to cry softly. My father just shook his head. In fact, I said, I asked her to come here tonight. I felt it was important for everyone to finally meet her, to put a face to the name. Just then, the doorbell rang, exactly on cue. A wave of confusion washed over the room. Amelia's victorious smile faltered, replaced by a look of genuine shock. She never thought I would actually bring my supposed mistress to a family dinner. I stood up. "Excuse me," I said. I walked to the door and opened it. Standing on the porch was Catherine Shaw. She was dressed in a sharp, professional business suit, carrying a slim leather briefcase. I led her into the dining room. My family stared, their mouths agape. Amelia looked like she had seen a ghost. "Mom, Dad, Sarah," I said, my voice ringing with a newfound clarity. "This is the woman Amelia has been telling you about. The woman I've been meeting with in secret for the past 6 weeks." Amelia, recovering quickly, saw her opening. She stood up, her voice trembling with manufactured rage. "How dare you?" she shrieked. "How dare you bring that homewrecker into this house, in front of your family?" This was her final performance. And it was a good one. But the show was over. Catherine stepped forward, a calm, unreadable expression on her face. She looked directly at Amelia. "Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said, her voice cool and crisp. "My name is Catherine Shaw. I'm a licensed private investigator." She placed her briefcase on the dining room table and clicked it open. "And your fiancé, Daniel, is my client." Final update. The silence that followed Catherine's introduction was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. The color drained from Amelia's face, replaced by a ghastly pale shade of terror. My family just stared, their minds struggling to process this sudden, violent shift in the narrative. Catherine didn't waste any time. She was a surgeon, and this was an operation. "Daniel hired me 6 weeks ago," she began, her voice cutting through the silence, "because he suspected his fiancée was being dishonest. My job was to find the truth. And I did." She pulled out the first file from her briefcase. "Let's start with the evidence of Daniel's infidelity." She placed the enlarged, uncropped photos of my business lunch on the table. These photos were taken by Amelia's accomplice, a man named Alex Brenner, and deliberately edited to create a false impression. She then produced a forensic report. This is an analysis of the text messages from Catherine. They were created using a simple, commercially available application found in the unsecured cloud backup of Amelia's secondary phone. They are, to use a legal term, a complete fabrication. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. My father just stared at the papers, his face turning from disappointment to a slow-burning rage. "But why would she do this?" my sister asked, her voice a whisper. "That's the interesting part," Catherine said, pulling out a second, much thicker file. "This wasn't just a breakup, it was a heist." For the next 10 minutes, Catherine laid out the entire conspiracy in cold, brutal detail. The affair with Alex, the offshore bank account, the systematic embezzlement of over $200,000 from my savings. She presented bank statements, surveillance photos, and finally the transcripts of the text messages between Amelia and Alex, the ones where they plotted my destruction and their luxurious escape. She read their words aloud. "Once he's isolated, he'll be desperate to settle. We can drain him completely." With every word, Amelia seemed to shrink. The confident, manipulative woman was gone, replaced by a cornered, terrified animal. When Catherine finished, she turned to my father, a former prosecutor. "What you're looking at," Catherine said, gesturing to the mountain of evidence on the table, "is not just infidelity. It's wire fraud, conspiracy, and grand larceny." Amelia finally broke. She let out a guttural sob and lunged for the evidence, trying to tear it up. But my father, moving faster than I'd seen him move in years, grabbed her wrist. His voice, when he spoke, was like ice. "That's destruction of evidence? And a confession." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a profound, gut-wrenching shame. "Daniel," he said, his voice cracking, "I am so sorry." "I know, Dad," I said. My sister was already on the phone. My father took it from her. "This is Mark Hayes," he said, his old prosecutor's voice booming with authority. "I am at 125 Oak Street. I am witnessing an admission to multiple felonies, and the suspect is actively attempting to destroy evidence. We require immediate assistance." The rest of the night was a blur. 2 officers arrived and, with my father explaining the situation and Catherine presenting a summary of the evidence, they had clear grounds to act. The sight of Amelia being led away in handcuffs, sobbing and pleading, was not one I will soon forget. It wasn't a moment of triumph. It was a moment of quiet, grim justice. In the months that followed, the legal system did its work. Faced with an insurmountable mountain of evidence, Amelia took a plea deal. She was convicted of grand larceny and sentenced to 3 years in prison. Her accomplice, Alex, was also arrested and is facing his own set of charges. I have a civil suit pending against both of them, and my lawyers are confident we will recover every penny she stole. My family and I have slowly started to heal. The trust was broken, but the foundation was strong. They are ashamed of how quickly they were manipulated. But I understand. My revenge wasn't just about exposing her. It was about reclaiming my life and my family from the poison she had injected into it. I didn't just want to win. I wanted to annihilate her entire strategy. She tried to use a lie to destroy my reputation, so I used the truth to destroy her freedom. She tried to steal my money, so I used it to hire the person who would ultimately put her behind bars. She tried to turn my family against me, And in the end, it was my family who witnessed her ultimate downfall. She wanted to play the victim. Now, as she sits in a prison cell, she has all the time in the world to perfect the role. She thought she was writing my tragedy. She had no idea she was just the villain in my story of survival. And my story has a much, much better ending.